When I first started out clubbing, I absolutely went dancing.
The world changed, everything changed.
You're trancing out, you're getting totally lost in yourself, totally lost in the music.
It was very kind of like particular movements, sort of like.
Anytime you're approaching it, you could hear like the.
It's about community, it's about passion.
Rave was good because it brought people together.
You were finding your tribe, you were finding the music, you're searching out the music that you love.
Whilst it would be wrong to suggest that all raving was political in some way, it was still a massive fuck you to the establishment at that time.
I was all for rave. I was all for it. I think it'd be good.
My name is Beate Peter. I'm an academic at Manchester Metropolitan University and I'm the lead researcher on the Labs Clubber project. The Labs Clubber project is funded by the Heritage Lottery Fund with the aim to establish the Labs Clubber audio map, which is a map where people can upload their spoken memories to reminisce about their raving days. My aim, primarily, is to let the public know that I feel has been misinformed over the years about rave culture, that it's not just been drugs and music, but that it's actually had an impact on how communities are built and how people feel in their communities.
Rave just came along at a time when I think people needed something like that to happen, globally.
It's going forward to like 1989. From my experiences then as a 15-year-old, the world changed, everything changed, the rave culture and the acid house parties, as we called them, that were on our doorstep, that are happening in the Northwest, completely changed going out as an experience.
Any movement like that does fill a gap.
It's another element sort of on the journey through my life that has made me continue to believe that subculture's incredibly important.
Because when you're in it, are you actually conscious that it's a culture? You're just thinking, well, it's not that old music that my mum and dad listened to.
A lot of sound systems sort of open up as it felt like a very sort of creative time, everything coming together and everyone being on the same tip.
People that were into it just the same as you, and the people that danced all night just the same as you, and it's finding families. So I think with rave culture, it's just another moment, the explosive moment when suddenly with music everything becomes possible.
Raves as events are so much more than just an opportunity to dance. I would argue that they really add to the mental well-being of people.
People's lives in some ways could be quite miserable, both in terms of like work and standard of life, but also socially, culturally. So when the rave culture thing happened, it was like moths to a light, that was the light and people went for it.
The Labs Clubber map is part of Manchester Digital Music Archive. You access it through the main page. When Beata and I first started having meetings, as a researcher, she's fascinated by ordinary people's stories, and so am I. So that was kind of one of the driving elements, really. And we just wanted to marry that up with doing something really cutting edge that hadn't been done before in terms of collecting short oral histories digitally.
There was no divide between hunter and artist within this giant herbal tea party bubble. So it was just the most easiest place to express yourself.
I do see this project as a pilot to see how audio archives can help to preserve heritage, maybe in a more natural way.
It's an experiment technically, and then it's an experiment sort of socially, if you like, to just think of a memory and just talk for a minute and pin it and sort of stake their little claim in history. We were almost looking at recreating initially that sort of confessional booth where you could just be in front of your own computer and just say, oh yeah, that time at the Old Steam Brewery when I shat myself or whatever.
So originally we set up public events where people could leave memories, and they felt quite caged and reluctant to leave their memories.
Kind of by accident, we had a few people round one day, and we just found that everybody's memories just kind of bounced off each other. So one person would say one thing, and that would get another person thinking about another thing. And because they're talking about raving and such a special time, there would just be this vibe in the room and this atmosphere that the recordings would capture.
First time I went to the Hacienda must have been about 93, 94.
Well, my first experience of rave culture was probably Conspiracy. I didn't get it really.
I didn't go to many raves, to be honest. I was a Hacienda boy through and through. I didn't need to go anywhere else. I don't think I did anyway.
I went to Flesh at the Hacienda. That was my first experience. Got myself a little leather waistcoat to fit in, I suppose, with my newly out self.
You buy jeans, baggy clothes, trainers. Timberlands were quite popular at the time. Everybody wore Timberlands. And obviously they were loose, baggy clothes, which give you the freedom to move around and, you know, get on it.
The most exciting things are when there's a mix of people. The rave scene, definitely in its early days, was a mix of people. It didn't matter what colour you were, what class you were, you know, everybody was there. Everyone who was interested in something that was different, that was happening, that was exciting.
I can't think of anything that has been so transformational. It filled a part of my life, certainly, where I could go out and feel safe and feel part of a community unlike anything I'd done before.
And that's why you'd get that change from people maybe going out in clubs, getting really baited up and fighting, you know, to, you know, a few weeks later people are, you know, taking ecstasy and acid in clubs and are hugging each other, and you can quite happily go out all night in a place where people are from Blackburn, Burnley, Manchester, Liverpool, Leeds, all in the same place, and there's no trouble.
It totally changed my perception of humanity, I suppose.
You can find new friends, you're finding new styles, you find everything, you know, the energy is fresh and new. And I think that's exactly what it was again with rave culture.
It also made me realise that the world is sort of 80% lovely.
Part of your identity, just as a person, is finding who and what you like, sexually, musically, stylistically, and the best place to do that is in clubs.
When I first started clubbing and through my clubbing experience in Manchester, a lot of it was very underground.
And the first official rave that I ever went to would have been Joy in Rochdale. That was up on the tops behind Rochdale. That was pretty good.
I preferred by far these little kind of underground little clubs that were in restaurants that were kind of converted at night. And, like at Strangeways, for instance, it was upstairs in Strangeways.
I started getting calls from promoters who wanted to put gigs on in derelict buildings, which was totally different, you know what I mean? You go into this building and it was like, oh my God, there was no comfort at all. It was just an empty building with a massive sound system in it, you know what I mean?
The ceiling was so low that without fail, every single week by 3 in the morning, it would start raining inside the club because of all the sweat.
When I first started out clubbing, I absolutely went dancing. So I was a sweaty, horrible geezer.
And so it would start dripping from the roof, which weirdly was quite a nice experience because you were so hot. You knew it was sweat, but frankly, you didn't care. It was like, oh, thank God for that, a bit of rain at last.
So I'd just dance all night. You know what I mean? So I used to go with me towels, go with me brute, go with me shoes, I had to go with extra clothing and tops.
There was an after club called Club Ethos, where they used to film you coming in whatever state you were in, and then play it back as you were leaving on all the TV screens around the club. And then when you were coming in the next week, the TV screens would be showing you coming out the week before, which could be quite horrific, it has to be said.
There are quite a few memories, if you search on the map, that talk about the way people engage on the dance floor. So once they enter the dance floor, however it's defined, they lose themselves. And I'm particularly interested in this notion of losing yourself.
Music that I associate with rave is a beautiful, incredible art form in its own right. And the way that music is experienced is something that can be totally transcendent.
I sort of realised that I could anticipate what was going to happen in the music.
You're trancing out, you're getting totally lost in yourself, totally lost in the music. Very sort of spiritual feeling that you take with you.
Yeah, people sort of compare it to religion. It's not an exact sort of thing, but it's tapping into something similar. That's what it gave me access to, just this transcendent experience.
It's tribal, it's shamanic. We need to go into like an altered state, and we need to get out of our minds and be in our bodies and forget about what's going on. And the rave culture provided an amazing opportunity for people to do that.
This is the way of lifting yourself, and I just feel in a different realm. I enter a different space, different sort of time zone.
Time warped completely, and it was, yeah, you were just completely lost, not just in the music and the people, but also in, you know, lost in time and space as well.
With music, time sort of truncates and expands. And, it's the same with dancing. You know, suddenly you have control over time, or I do anyways.
It was just a real time just to let yourself go. You weren't worried about anything else. It's just being in the moment. I suppose what psychologists call flow. You're lost in the moment. You're dancing, and you just feel good, and that's all you want to do.
You can do things that you can't do the rest of the time, and then it ends, and then you go back to life. And that's what rave culture gave me, really.
For me, the rave culture, you know, satisfied a deep yearning people have, you know, that humans have, to come together, to dance, to celebrate, and to move.
Some of the more amusing dance styles that I've ever seen have been in the rave clubs. You know, just people who probably never had the urge to dance before would pop an ecstasy tablet, and all of a sudden, you know, you're Superman in the middle of a dance floor.
It's about community, it's about passion, it's about a shared experience, all centred around music. So why is that any different to, you know, going to the opera or whatever? If you want to take a shitload of MDMA whilst you're doing that, you know, fine, but that's not the whole story.
I never really needed to take drugs to get off my head in a club, because that's what music gives me. Music always has lifted me.
I wouldn't be scared to get on the floor, because if I trusted the DJ, then they'd know I'd be dancing something, and then you just need 2 or 3 people. That was kind of eye candy for the others, and the others would kind of shimmy along on the edge, and then the whole night, then the DJ would start the whole story rolling.
It was very easy to play to, because everything that you played, they lapped it up. In the soul club back in the day, if you played a track that they didn't like, they'd just walk off the floor.
Everybody would troop onto the dance floor when their favourite record came on, and then they'd all troop off again when something they didn't like came on. And then with dance music, you know, the techno and whatever, you just stayed on the dance floor all the time, and just the energy just built and built.
But the rave thing, you could play anything. You could rewind the track backwards and have the beat going, and they danced to it seriously. And the hotter it was, and the more they sweat, the more they enjoyed it. And that was all part of, you know, the music and the drugs as well.
Modern society has been criticized for not allowing people to come together in communities, to connect with one another, to share interests, ideas, emotions, and the rave did all of that.
it's different for this generation as it was for us. I think we had a greater need for the music then.
Before digital music, you had record shops. If you wanted your music, you had to go to the record shop.
There was no digital in those days. They were buying blind, you know what I mean? They'd get a list from America, this is what we've got on vinyl, and they'd just buy blind. They have no idea what they sound like. And the only time you find out what it sounds like is when they take it out of the case and play it, and we're like, oh yeah, I'll have a copy of this and stuff. So we're very dependent on, that was the focal point of our existence, the record shop.
All the record shops don't get enough props for their involvement in what the music movement at all. There's no discovery to it anymore.
We live in a different culture. We didn't have, mobile phones, and that connection with technology is a very different interaction, and I think that can make us less present as people.
No one was stood there pouting away or taking selfies all night. It's just people go out and you just enjoy the night, and it almost felt like you were doing something that everyone else didn't know about.
I think it's different because now the access to all the music is on your phone, so the actual adoration of particular songs isn't as great as it used to be because they can have it on the phones.
When I was younger, you'd go to see that DJ because it's the only place you could hear them play.
Annie Mac plays something, they download it and they've got it whereby you can have it, only that DJ might have it, or you might hear it on one radio show. If you was lucky, you got it on tape, or if you was lucky that you were waiting for your mate to copy the tape to you or borrow it off them. So many fights broke out of cassettes you will not believe, but that's another story.
There's less of that real solid tribe where I am into this DJ, this music, and I'm going to buy every record, and I'm going to go to as many parties as I can, because when they leave the UK, they're not going to come back for 2-3 years. They're here all the time. They're at every festival.
We are in a time now where we've got really worrying political events and movements happening. In terms of nationalism and there's some right-wing gains all around Europe, and there's a lot of racism rearing its head as well. And I think so the landscape is there again for a reaction to that, and through the arts and through music there is always reactions. There has to be reactions to that.
There is so much goodness in people, and despite how people see in their normal everyday lives, it just takes that one little key to unlock that goodness. And that's what the rave culture was about for me.
I think we need that connectivity, that physicality of sharing that same baseline, them same moments, because it's so easy to just be absorbed with our phones. In these times that we're in and stuff, it's more important to get out and meet people and get sweaty with one another.
So all I can say is, if you want to get involved and if you feel your memory is important to representing rave culture in Greater Manchester between 1985 and 95, then go on the MDMA website, click on the Labs Clubber audio map, leave your memory, and I'm sure it's going to be a great contribution to the project.
That I had with my boss at the Hacienda, Tony Wilson. He's told me that black music was going to be the staple of white musical culture. And I'm arguing with him, like, no way, that's not happening. And then House came along and just basically took the whole world over, you know what I mean? And I kind of like, wow, that was what he was talking about. How did he know this?
I decided to have a pinning party because I grew up on the dance floor, and my formative memories and friendships and experiences and my career was forged in nightclubs. So the chance to remember some of those memories when a lot of the people that I was around and moved on is wonderful, and the chance to be with old friends and to try to remember some of these things is invaluable. I see.